Hello everyone, we are ready for chapter 26 of The Treasure Hunter's Tale. I'm not good today, but we'll plough through. The journey back to the edge of the forest was much easier as they had cleared a decent pathway on their way in, so they made good progress once more. They came out into a field and found a nice place to sit and refresh themselves while they had a better look at the stones. They spread them out and turned them all over so that the words were all showing. Ears to Hear then told them what he had seen. The carving said 3726, he said, not sure whether it's related, but thought it might be there to help us. They noticed that there were a few hearts that had the actual word heart on them, so they piled these together, and then there were a few that said new. Like my father's name, observed Freddie, because he's called Newhart. Well done, Freddie, cried Mr. Discover the Truth, getting out his Bible. In which case, I have an idea, he said. What were those numbers you saw, Ears to Hear? 3726, said Ears to Hear. Then he jumped up. And the wood is called Ezekiel, he cried triumphantly. Exactly, said Mr. Discover the Truth. Now, let me see. Ah, yes, here it is. Now, if I read this verse out, you can put the stones in the right place. He began to read slowly. A new heart will I give to you. A new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the heart of stone out of you, and I will give you a new heart of flesh. That's exactly right, said Mr. Saved by Grace, and a clever idea to carve them on these stones too. The men put the little stone hearts back into the velvet purse and stood up. They had got quite stiff from climbing and then resting for a little too long. Well, let's head back, said Mr. Saved by Grace. Aren't your parents coming back tomorrow, Freddie? Freddie, who had had such a busy, full, eventful few days, had quite lost track of time and suddenly jumped up. Yes, they are, and how much we will have to tell them, he said excitedly. They all made their way back along the road and into the town. On their way, they came across a large crowd. There was obviously some sort of disturbance going on, and it didn't sound very good, so, gripping their swords, the men went to see what all the fuss was about. They made their way through the crowds to find two men fighting. They had torn off each other's shirts and were grappling together, but this wasn't a fight for sport. There was something about the way they fought that suggested there was a grievance to be settled, and the crowd seemed to have taken two sides and were unhelpfully cheering them on. Stop it at once, shouted Mr. Discover the Truth. His voice was so loud and masterful that the two young men stopped, very surprised to see what looked like a knight. What is this all about? He asked in a quieter but still firm way. The crowd started shouting different things. Stop! Boomed Mr. Discover the Truth again. Let these men tell the reason. And then looking at the crowd, you can all leave. And he said it in such an authoritative voice that the people obeyed and shuffled off. Now then, said Mr. Discover the Truth, turning to the two young men, what is this all about? The first man, who had a very bloody nose, mumbled something. Speak up, man, said Mr. Discover the Truth, for you were yelling enough just now. He called me a swindler, said the man in a grumpy voice. He called me a swindler and a liar and a cheat. Mr. Discover the Truth turned to the other man. Is this true? He asked sternly. Yes, sir, breathed the other man, who had a very black eye. And why did you call him that? Asked Mr. Discover the Truth. Because he is one, said the young man obstreperously. That's not a good enough answer, said Mr. Discover the Truth. What proof do you have that he is one? The man shuffled a little. There was something about Mr. Discover the Truth that made him feel small and uncomfortable. Well, man, Mr. Discover the Truth looked severely at the young man. He sold me a bad saw, he said eventually. It was all warped and rubbish. And is this true? Asked Mr. Discover the Truth to the other man. Yes, confessed the man, but I sold it cheaper. It seems to me that you are both at fault, observed Mr. Discover the Truth firmly. You for selling something you knew wasn't good and for retaliating when you were called out, and you for buying something at a lower price and then complaining about it. You are both wrong for starting a fight over this and being a bad example of what young men should be like. There was something about the firm but fair way in which Mr. Discover the Truth dealt with the men that impressed them deep down. And now I have something more to say to you. You are both lying, swindling cheats. The two men looked surprised. Listen to me, said Mr. Discover the Truth, and let me explain. We are all lying, swindling cheats, and much worse. God gave his law long ago, and it says, do not lie, do not steal, do not murder. I never murdered, mumbled one of the men. Ah, but that's just it. What if we hadn't have stopped you fighting just now? What if one of you had taken the life of the other? But even if that hadn't have happened, Jesus, God's son, said, if you even hate your brother, you are guilty of murdering him. The two young men looked surprised. Again, what if one of you had killed the other? From what I see, you are both pretty strong and certainly weren't going to stop. What would have happened then? Jail, said one man quietly. Yes, and deserved too, said Mr. Discover the Truth. Would the judge be a good, fair judge if he didn't punish you? No, muttered the other man. No is right, said Mr. Discover the Truth. So God, who is a just judge, has to punish sin too. Hey, mister, why are you telling us all this? Asked one of the young men. I'm telling you this because I used to be like you two, brawling and fighting and not really caring. What happened? Asked the man with the black eye, who was curious despite himself. I am glad you asked, smiled Mr. Discover the Truth. What happened was I was in the docks and a man walked in and said he would pay for all my sins and take my punishment instead. The two young men were quiet for a time. Then one said, Why did he do that, mister? Because he loves me, said Mr. Discover the Truth simply. All this time, the other men were standing by, watching this masterful conversation. Freddie was especially impressed with the way Mr. Discover the Truth was being so clever in the way he was speaking to engage the young men and distract them and calm them down. Ears to Hear was also very impressed with how in control Mr. Discover the Truth was and how the two young men clearly respected him. They even shook his hand when they left, both with invitations to visit the men's lodging house the next day, where they would talk some more.